Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today I'm going to do something that YouTubers never really do, and I'm going to admit that I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Let's have a look at this card in here. This is one that is $20 at the moment. I fully expect it to drop a fair chunk though. That is me talking about Abhorrent Oculus, which is the point of this video. And at the time when it was coming out, it was, this is one that is $20. It was pre-ordering at, as you'll see here, $20, and I fully expected it to drop before that, and I suggested it in my Zabone video. I didn't pre-order one because I'm like, oh, it's going to drop for sure. It has not dropped. It has done the exact opposite. In fact, it spiked up to around $40 upon release, which was pretty crazy. So we're going to be talking about why this card is so strong, why it is so expensive, as well as just overall, how you could potentially use it if you manage to get one and get lucky. I will say, I took my own advice. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't get it because I expected it to drop. So shame on me and apologies again. So as I said, I was wrong, and I wanted to kind of talk about why and go a little bit in depth into this Abhorrent Oculus because I did not expect it to be quite as good as it was. While I knew that it was going to be a decent card for Commander, that was where I was kind of focused on, right? I was focusing on Commander. I thought, hey, this is going to be good, but then it ended up getting to the point that it is just crazy in a lot of formats. It is, in fact, just like top of so many decks, so many decks that are at the top of so many different formats at the moment. So we're going to talk about all of those. It's obviously amazing within face down decks, which is the point of it, was to be able to manifest dread and be able to get a face down creature on each opponent's upkeep. And then from there you could flip them and stuff like that. But it's just also so great in other decks as well. And there's a number of different reasons as to why. In Commander is where we're going to mainly focus, but I will talk about the other ones as well. There's also some people talk about it potentially having a lower drop rate than other mythics. Now, that's not confirmed, and I do think that that's a little bit tinfoil hatty, but, it is potential that they did make it a lower drop rate, but that's, as I said, like a complete kind of, who knows, conspiracy. Obviously, conspiracies can be true, but we'll have to see as to whether that ends up being true or not. Before we get into it though, make sure you guys subscribe, make sure you share the video around, all that kind of stuff. I love the support, and this is my full-time job, so it's supporting me for my full-time job. And you can also, if you want to support financially, you can head on over to the Patreon. No one's expected to do it, but you have the option there if you want to support us that way. As I said, this is my full-time job alongside being a full-time dad, and every support is appreciated. So why is it so good? There's a number of different reasons that just kind of each one individually would have been good, but then when you put them all together, it just creates this bonkers strong card. So first of all, it's got 3 CMC. This is incredibly important because it makes it very easy to cast, which you aren't likely to do at the start of the game unless you're self-milling yourself very fast. You're not going to cast this on turn 3 most likely, but it makes it super easy to reanimate. There is a lot of cards out there that are reanimate something that has 3 CMC or less. This kind of hits that really nice point of that. You don't need to hard cast it, keep in mind. It's just if you cast this spell, you need to pay the additional cost. Not if you cheat it out onto the battlefield with like a tutor or something, or if you reanimate it from your graveyard, or if you clone it. There's just so many different ways this can be useful. Each opponent's upkeep is also incredibly strong. Obviously, that's more for Commander. It's very strong. Otherwise, it's just, your opponent's upkeep, but still getting something on your opponent's upkeep is still decent. It's a flying 5/5 beat stick. The main kind of bad thing about this is needing to cast it. When you cast it, you need to exile 6 cards from your graveyard, which makes it hard to cast it just raw until mid-late game. But there's so many ways to be able to cheat that out. It's just so incredible in every other way that's the only one downside for it, but that you can bypass so easily. So let's talk about different formats. We'll start off with standard. Now, I am not going to claim that I am amazing every format or know in depth about every format. However, I can, put all that information together from everywhere else. So it's seeing some use within Azorius Mentor decks, for example. it's got a mixture of like reanimate stuff, control, and then some graveyard play, spell slingery stuff. Alrighty, so this is the deck here. So obviously, you know, the name comes from like the Monastery Mentor here, which is when you cast a spell, you get to create some tokens, white monk tokens with prowess. Then you've got a lot of spells in here that are, you know, some counters, some removal. You know, you've got the helping hand in here, which is where it really comes in really strong, being able to resurrect something or reanimate, something from the graveyard with mana value 3 or less. The Abhorrent Oculus is 3 or less, as well as the Monastery Mentor. So you can easily bring back either of those two with these helping hands, which is great. We've got like Recommission in here too, Soul Partition, some more like counters and stuff. There's just overall a lot of kind of control stuff in here. Which is just really, really great to kind of see. And then, you know, the Haunting Djinn here for later on in the game, once you've kind of filled up your graveyard with instants and sorceries, to have like a huge beat stick there that also makes it easier to be able to cast more instants and sorceries too. All right, next up we've got is Modern. So this is very strong in a Dimir Murktide deck. Now keep in mind that I'm talking about the decks, but there's obviously other decks that are going to go well with it as well. I'm just kind of focusing more on like one deck from each that it's going well with. So the Dimir Murktide decks, which funny enough aren't really running Murktide anymore, I don't think. So you get your graveyard filled up, and then from there it's buffing up your Nevergoyfs and having big Nevergoyfs to be able to throw at people. You can fill your graveyard very, very easily with this, and then you can cheat out Abhorrent as well as, you know, you can cheat Nethergoyf back in too by exiling stuff. So here's an example of one of the decks. So we've got like Unearth to be able to bring something back. Again, choose target creature with graveyard with total casting cost 3 or less and put that creature into play. Reanimate something with 3 CMC or less. Boom. But you've got like Psychic Frog here to be able to actually discard things, get them into your graveyard to get the Abhorrent Oculus back out as well. Thought Scour here to mill and draw cards. You know, they've got like counters, some control. So it's a very like big, a bunch of like counters and control-y kind of stuff too, which is nice. And then just being able to cheat back out your Nethergoyfs, which is, again, that's 1 CMC here. You know, you're not running anything here above 3 CMC, so you can technically just bring back anything with Unearth if you wanted to. Really, really cool. Also, the thing is that you'll see that not all of them are wanting to necessarily bring those manifested cards and flip them over or anything. Sometimes you just want to keep the manifested card down as like a creature, a 2/2 beat stick that you can throw at people. Next, we've got Pioneer. So Pioneer, as far as I can tell, we're seeing play for it in 2 different decks. The Esper Greasefang decks, as well as some Enigmatic Incarnation decks. And I think it's more in those Enigmatic Incarnation decks, but also the Greasefang decks. Between the both of them, like, you know, you've got some ways to be able to reanimate things or be able to cheat things out from your deck as well. So Enigmatic lets you cheat something out from your deck, which means you don't have to pay that exile cost. Then Greasefang is going to be a bunch of kind of reanimate stuff. So this is the Greasefang version here. So you've got Greasefang to be able to bring vehicles back from the graveyard to the battlefield. So you've got Pathelion, you've got, what is it? There's 4 Pathelions, and then there's run the Sky Sovereign as well. You've also got Zoraline here to bring stuff back. 4 different Abhorrent Oculuses in here too. A bunch of ways to bring gain life, draw cards, discard cards, you know, fill up your graveyard a little bit too. Very, very interesting deck, actually. I like this one a lot. Especially like utilizing like these Pathelions to then create more angels. Very cool. Especially you cheat the, I love it. I really love it. I think it's really cool. Now, obviously, you know, getting to Commander here. So in Commander, you're going to fit this into so many different things if you've got it. You've got like reanimate decks, obviously. You've got morph/face down decks. You've got self-mill decks, flicker/blink decks, and you've got like sacrifice-based decks as well. It's a huge value piece in basically any of those, right? So having a look, obviously, Zimone is like the main one that I've suggested it for, and I think it's great in Zimone to be able to like bring out face downs and flip them and everything. But, you know, you've got like Zadina here as well, which makes it so that each opponent's upkeep, you're drawing a card too. You got Xanathar You can cloak out the abhorrent and then you'll be able to flicker it and bring it back, or you can just, obviously in this, you're most likely running things to be able to flip cards. Great way to be able to cheat it out. So these are all focusing on face downs, but looking at other stuff, like you've got Brago here. Whenever you deal combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return them. Now, if you don't know, if you flicker/blink a face down card, it gets exiled face up and then comes back onto the battlefield face up. Now, keep in mind that if you do that with an instant or sorcery, it wouldn't be able to come back. But if you do it with like a enchantment, land, obviously creature, artifact, then they're going to come back as those. Really cool. You've got Sephiroth here, a graveyard play, being able to you've got like the self-mill stuff in here. If you put something in there from Abhorrent, then you're going to venture into the dungeon. So you can venture into the dungeon on each opponent's turn too, potentially, by putting creatures into your graveyard. And then also, whenever you complete a dungeon, boom, now you get to reanimate something. We've got like other cards. So these are obviously, I'm focusing more on Commander here, that you could run in a deck with Abhorrent. So like Buried Alive here, if you're running like a Reanimate deck or a Self-Mill deck, this is going to work really well with those. Gossip Talent, that's going to make it so each time those face down cards deal combat damage to an opponent, they're going to get flickered. Really great. Yeah, I actually love Gossip's Talent. I think this is probably my favorite card to come out of so many different sets. As well as you got the Surveil here too. So you're surveilling and then you get to surveil on opponent's turns. Oh man, I didn't think about how crazy that would be with this. And then we've got Into the Pit. So with where, getting out a whole bunch of 2/2s, some of them are going to potentially be instants and sorceries, right? There's no way to avoid that. Or they're lands. We could sacrifice them with Into the Pit to be able to cast something from the top of our library. So again, I'm sorry here. I'll try and be better in the future, try and look at other kind of formats that it could be strong in as well. But how are you guys enjoying Abhorrent? I really need one for Zimone. I probably want funds for some other decks as well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Like any kind of blue deck that features any of those, I think it would be great in. Or did you guys miss out on getting one now that it's bonkers? And yeah, if you did miss out because you decided not to pre-order because I said so, I do, sincerely apologize. Have a great day and goodbye.